dragon claw, wing and scale. Come now, let's examine a tale of the greatest beast ever considered. Another episode of Big Flying Lizards.
Welcome to Big Flying Lizards, a dragon movie and television podcast. I am your host, Bryce Wilson, and I am joined by, once again, the one, the only, Chayce Hernandez, or known to you by many, Chayce Smith. Chayce, how we doing?
I feel great. I've come far, I've come west, I've read the golden plates, and I'm ready to talk about it.
The golden plates, the most holiest of texts.
And I'm ready to start this 40 wife families. So girls, if you're in the comments, if you have a nice 401k, at least a six-figure job, and you want to be a part of something greater than yourself, Big Flying Lizards has a family for you.
Well, you know, after all, Muhammad was asking us, I think it was 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, where are all the women at? So, you know, you never know.
They're getting married to me.
I hate to break it to you, Muhammad. Hate to break it to you. But, Chayce, what are we talking about today?
Well, I'm actually really excited about today's topic. There's been a lot of stuff in the news, and I've been waiting to talk about it. So let's get into it. You know, there was a lot of puns there. We're here to talk about nothing more, nothing less.
You weren't going to be asking me where I was Friday. I'll have you know, my dad was asking. He was like, "Bryce, don't you drive a Charger? What's going on?"
All right, people are getting canceled over this, and this is not. I don't want to see you get canceled over of this exact topic.
Canceled? I've been talking more to get arrested over here. What are we talking about?
You know what? There is a funny thing I need to tell you, but we'll get into that later in this episode, I'm sure. Sure. But anyways, we're here to talk about a little Game of Thrones season numero dos.
And those for our English speakers is season 2.
Numero dos.
If it's all right with you, Chayce, I would love to just introduce the season with a little write-up.
I think do it. Let's just jump in.
All righty. The second season of the fantasy drama television series Game of Thrones premiered in the United States on HBO on April 1st, 2012, and concluded on June 3rd, 2012. The season mostly covered the events of A Clash of Kings, the second novel of A Song of Ice and Fire series by George R.R. Martin, adapted for television by David Benioff and D.B. Weiss. HBO ordered the second season on April 19th, 2011, which began filming in July 2011, primarily in Ireland, Northern Ireland, Croatia, and Iceland. The story takes place in a fantasy world primarily of a fictional continent called Westeros, with one storyline occurring in another continent to the east, Essos. Like the novel, the season mainly centers around the War of the Five Kings, fought among the leaders of Westerosi factions who are either staking a claim for the Iron Throne or seeking independence from it. Cersei Lannister stays in the capital as Queen Regent, while her son Joffrey rules as King of the Seven Kingdoms. Cersei's twin brother, Jaime, is Robb Stark's prisoner, and her other brother, the dwarf Tyrion Lannister, serves as acting hand of the king to Joffrey until the sibling's father, Tywin Lannister, returns to helm and defend the capital. In the north, Jon Snow and the Night's Watch stay with a reluctant ally during an expedition beyond the Wall. Meanwhile, in Essos, with 3 newborn dragons by her side, Daenerys Targaryen attempts to find allies and resources to help her fulfill her perceived destiny and win the Iron Throne. Game of Thrones featured a large ensemble cast, which include Peter Dinklage, Lainey Headley, Nikolaj Coster-Waldau, Michelle Fairley, and Emilia Clarke. The season included some new cast members, including Stephen Dilliance, Natalie Dormer, and Liam Cunningham. Critics praised the show's production value, cast, and music. Viewership rose compared to the previous seasons. The second season won 6 of the 12 Emmys for which it was nominated, and received a nomination for Outstanding Supporting Actor for a Drama Series for Peter Dinklage, an Outstanding Drama Series. The U.S. viewership rose approximately 8% during the course of the season, from 3.9 million to 4.2 million by the season finale. So, all in all, an acclaimed show, an acclaimed season. What's that on your head?
What are you talking about?
You're right. What am I talking about? But overall thoughts, and obviously we're going to get into the nitty gritty of each one of these episodes. Overall thoughts of this season in particular before we get going.
And this season, if you get to season 2, you're in. You're going to watch the entire thing. Because season 2 really just picks right up, and you can tell immediately that they got their bag. They got money on this season, and you can see it immediately. The costumes, they spent all of the money and so little time spending that money, and they spent it well. They spent it very well. It looks good. It is honestly a night and day difference from the first season. The first season, when you go back, it looks like they're LARPing. And then this second season, those motherfuckers had that shit on for real. And so I think we should open a new segment in the show called Fit Watch. And I'm gonna tell you right now, some of them had that shit on for real.
Chayce, it's funny you say that because ironically enough, that is not a new segment. That is an old segment that we did back when we were watching House of the Dragon. At the very end of the episode, we were doing our fit picks, naming our favorite fit, and then our
Perfect. It's time for it to come back.
It is time for it to come back.
Because this is where the fits go crazy.
They go hard.
Cersei snaps time and time again.
It seems like if your last name is Lannister, it is almost like you have to.
You really had that shit on for real. That bankroll was deep. But besides this and the absolute fit watch that we will be doing, no, this season gets you. This season, it really, the first season they get you with killing Ned and all of the things. But this second season, it just works. It just, all of the setup from the first season, they pick right back up on it, and it's just executed well. The characters make logical, they make great jumps. You see a lot of them really come to life. It's probably one of the best sophomore seasons, I think, out of a lot of TV shows.
Here's the thing. I know that this might be, I don't want to say controversial, but I might be alone in this feeling. But season 2 might be one of my favorite seasons of all of Game of Thrones. Bar for bar, this is still when each episode doesn't feel like it's building up to the finale. This is also when you're really starting to see Tyrion in his prime. This is prime Tyrion, where he's intelligent.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah, I really think that his character takes a hard downturn. Not to say that he's not a compelling character for the rest of the show, but he's just not the same as he is in this second season. Because he's intelligent, he's tactical, he's vicious. You actually see that side of him where he's I don't give a fuck. I'm the hand of the king. What are you going to do? Stop me? And even later on, and we're not talking about these episodes and points today, but he even has that attitude with Joffrey, who's the king.
No, absolutely. This is where he learns to love the game.
Well, in the book, and I think he does say this in the show too, but it definitely is in the book where he's just sitting there and reflecting and he's talking about, I love this. I am not, it's the first time where he's other people are acknowledging that he's good at something because everybody underestimates him. And that's his biggest strength because he is not, just because he's small, just because he's in their eyes deformed, they just treat him like he's just, well, that's just the deformed son of Tywin. He's the least dangerous Lannister. But he ends up being the most dangerous of all the Lannisters in the show because of just how he's able to manipulate people. And it's just so much fun to see because this, I think, again, and I know I mentioned this a few times in the last, when we were covering season 1, but this is where we really start to see House of Cards bleed into Game of Thrones because yes, there's violence. Yes, there's dragons. Yes, there's fantasy. But what makes this season so special is just the political movements that they're making. And it's just so delicious.
Yeah, absolutely. This is truly, I think it's one of the better seasons in the sense of, I guess the best way I can put it is they haven't made a mess out of it yet. It's just the game. It's the Game of Thrones. It's the politics. Some of the worst times are coming up. Some of the best times are coming up. But I think you don't really have the pressure from the overwhelming main storyline right now. And this season really doesn't progress the main storyline all that much. It's really just here's character development, and you get it.
And the funny thing is that you mentioned that, and I completely agree. But something else that they do is I think they recognize which actors are really thriving in their roles right now, and which actors really need some time to get into the character a little bit more. Because especially in these first two episodes, who are the actors and actresses that we were saying needed to get some work? We were talking about how Bran's act needed some work. We were talking about how Sansa's actress needed some work. And even characters that we really do end up loving, like John's character still needed some work. And what are they doing? They're keeping them like they're still reminding like, oh, they're still here. John's in the north. Bran's in Winterfell. Sansa is almost a prison, not almost, but Sansa's a prisoner to the Lannisters. But they're not like making them have these long scenes like Tyrion is, like Cersei is, like Rob is. And I think that that's very wise just to make sure that people are still falling in love with the appropriate characters in the show.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think a good jump off to hop into the first segment of this, because this episode starts off with, and the season starts off with such a good season opener. And it really just hits the ground running with Tyrion.
Well,
This first episode.
If it's all right with you, then let's go ahead and introduce the individual episode, because I do have some thoughts. I agree, but I do want to provide some slight pushback.
I'm wet for it. Let's go.
All right. Season 2, Episode 1, The North Remembers. In King's Landing, Tyrion arrives and is appointed as new acting hand of the king by his father, Tywin Lannister, angering his sister, Queen Cersei. Stannis Baratheon, with his priestess Melisandre by his side, proclaims himself rightful king. He sends letters across Westeros revealing the truth that Joffrey is not Robert Baratheon's true son, but a product of Cersei and Jaime's incest. King Joffrey, enraged by the accusations, orders a massacre of all of King Robert's bastards in the city. Arya, disguised as a boy, is traveling north to the Wall with Gendry, one of Robert's bastards, and others, unknowingly escaping Joffrey's purge. Robb Stark, now declared King of the North, is winning victories against the Lannisters. He sends Theon Greyjoy to persuade his father, Balon Greyjoy, to join their rebellion. He sends his mother, Catelyn Stark, to negotiate an alliance with one other of those who claim the throne, Renly Baratheon. At the Night's Watch, Jon and Samwell Tarly seek shelter from a wildling named Craster in his keep. Daenerys Targaryen, with her Khalasar, are struggling to stay alive in the Red Waste. She sends out 3 riders to scout for help and look for resources. Now, they opened it up nice. They opened it up hard. They were going full at it. Our first shot in the season is the Hound just railing on a guy, just going at him with a mace, and it's for Joffrey's name day. However, I just want to apply a little bit of pushback, because in the books, there's a prologue to the book, and it's not necessarily, it's from the point of view of a character who actually dies in this first episode, but it's such a meaningful prologue and one of the best prologues, because it's introducing a character that we don't see until season 2 or book 2. And the point of view is the maester that ends up dying and trying to kill Melisandre. I think if we would have gotten an opening shot, again, like, it would confuse people because they don't know who's there. But I think it would have made Stannis, who's really one of the big players of season 2, be more meaningful. Like, if we're just, like, bear with me, like, if you're just opening shot and you're seeing that the maester is running over, there's burning, and you just hear the chanting of the Lord of Light, and you're just the ominous music. And then after Stannis pulls the sword, it cuts to that room where the maester tries to poison Stannis, and the poison like switches up and it dies. And right after the maester is like on the ground, like convulsing and dying, and Melisandre drinks the rest of the poison, and it just pans to Stannis, and then boom, goes into the intro of just like, I think that it, again, like, Stannis is such a big character, and like, he's like, in the book he's not so much, but in the show he's an evil character. I think that would be so much more meaningful of how they introduce him rather than just jumping in to like where we last left off. But again, I'm not arguing because it was really good. I just think that they missed an opportunity to really build up Stannis as more of a sinister character rather than just he almost seems like a peeved brother who's looked over in this first episode.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and his character, honestly, you want to talk about a character? We give Emily Clark a lot of flack. Stannis, I think, might be one of the worst presentations on the, and I think a lot of it does come with what you're saying with how they introduce him, which is just it falls so flat because you're catching yourself like, who is that?
Yeah,
And then you're just up to all of the lore as the show's going on and what it tells you, and it just kind of leaves you kind of bland with him. And I agree, it's an interesting angle they take with him. But I still not. What are you pushing back on?
well, you said that you loved how they introduced with Joffrey's name day, and like that's
Yes.
how the show opened up. Which again, it's a great shot, but I think it would have made Stannis's character seem so much more sinister than he actually like. Because again, and this is something that I get why they didn't portray it in the show, but in the book, he's borderline like autistic. Like he's borderline just all he's focused on is being king and being a just king. Like he doesn't even want the power. He doesn't like he almost doesn't even want to be king. Like he's like, it's my right. I'm being forced into this. My brother only has bastards. I don't want to be king, but rules are rules and you will follow the rules no matter what. And it's one of those things where he's just so single focused on something. But because of that, he's also just such an amazing military commander. All he cares about is war and doing what's just. He doesn't care about his wife. He doesn't really care about his kids. He doesn't really care. He doesn't have any friends. And even that maester who's like, Stannis was always a special boy. No one understood Stannis. I was the only one who just leaning into that side where he's just sort of, he's just different. And he's not like Joffrey. I mean, he's not like Robert. He's not like Renly. He's his own person and he's just a little off.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think I do think that would have helped his character out a ton if you had gotten that foreshadowing with it, like, oh, he's just hyper focused on like these qualities. But I feel like the TV show went the route it went purely because Joffrey, honestly, I mean, he was such a hit. You hate that character, and there's a lot to that. But I think that's where television took over.
Well, what do you mean by that? Well, like I agree, but I want you to like let's dive into that a little bit more.
And I think that's one of the balances in Game of Thrones. And honestly, what I think in the end, we'll get into that, but I think at some points, what makes good TV doesn't always what helps move or is accurate to the book. Sometimes I think sometimes they had to take chances because once again they just needed viewership and they needed these things. And so I think they who has the hot hand and who has the hot characters like we were talking about in this season, and letting those characters marinate in which parts of the stories you're going to pull from. And so I definitely think they did a little crowd work on this one and listened, because like the first couple episodes, really you have introductions of new characters, you don't have lots of time with new characters.
Well, and also like I agree, and we don't see this character in these first two episodes, but it's such a big deal when we finally do re-meet him. But Renly is almost a brand new character. Like he's visually unrecognizable from the first season. Personality wise, he's unrecognizable. He's filled with confidence and showing how he's actually a force to be reckoned with from Stannis. Why Stannis should be scared of him being king, because he's just as charismatic as Robert was. And I think that's something they're trying to establish, where Stannis has all of the military tactics that Robert had, while Renly had all of the charisma tactics, not even tactics, but all the charisma that Robert had. And it's just so fascinating to see which one the people flock to. And they want a king that they can love. They don't want a king that they fear. They want a king that they can be friends with.
Yeah, well, and once again, the Baratheon family, I feel in general, just didn't get a good look in the show for what they really were.
Yeah.
There's a reason they won the war.
Well, not only that, like, and again, I'm hoping that they dive into it more with these branch off shows that they're doing. But the Baratheons, a lot of people view the Baratheons as upstarts because they didn't build Storm's End, which is the castle that they rule. They got Storm's End because they helped Aegon the Conqueror take that over and depose the king that was there. And so in a lot of, and there's rumors as well that the Baratheons were like, the first Baratheon was a bastard Targaryen. So there's still that magic blood in their bloodline there. And even in the show, a lot of times the Targaryens treat the Baratheons as cousins. They don't treat them as another house that's under them. They just treat them as, oh, that's our boys over there.
Yeah,
so
yeah, I didn't pick up on that as heavily. But yeah, I mean, that really does check out for. But yeah, it's just interesting seeing how the show, picked it picked winners, and because of that, thank goodness for Peter Dinklage, because he
was eating.
That really freaking. I said this made his career till he made those dumb comments.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No, all right.
Well, speaking of actors that really ate, one actor, and there was a scene in particular in this episode that was between Petar Baelish and Cersei Lannister, and Aidan Gillian, who plays Littlefinger, just did such an amazing job. And it's honestly one of the most iconic conversations, I think, in the show. And it's because for the first season, we saw Littlefinger just trying to one-up the spider, Varys, and he tried one-up Ned, just finding ways to be subtle. And I think he felt like he was a little too close to the sun. I think he felt like he was such hot shit because he's over there and he's having a conversation with Cersei about just power as well as just rumors. And he's like hinting like, oh, there's rumors that, one having an affair with one's sibling, like that could be viewed as very scandalous, like just trying to show Cersei that he knows. And then he makes the comment, well, knowledge is power. And that's where Cersei does the whole like, okay, sees him and her soldiers arrest him. She tells him to cut his throat. They go to do it. And then she's like, oh, I changed my mind. Let him go. And then she's just giving all these commands to him. And she just goes up and like, hey, knowledge is not power. Power is power. And I think that scene alone not only like checked Littlefinger, but I think it just made him realize like how far he actually still has to go to accomplish all of his goals, because he's not in a position to be ruling over people when Cersei can pull a move like that.
Yeah, and I think I think there's so many reasons that conversation is important. I really think that demonstrates really what is at the heart of the Game of Thrones, which is, yes, there's politics, but at the end of the day, the sword matters. And we see that a lot in season 2. We see that up. There's politics, and then you realize like, oh, that person's not playing politics. They will kill you.
I really should wait for when it actually comes up in the show, but it's just so applicable right now. Varys goes up to Tyrion and he tells him a riddle. And the riddle is like, there's 3 men surrounding a sellsword. Those 3 men is a priest, a rich man, and a king. And all 3 of them tell the sellsword to kill the other. And he's like, all right, who lives and who dies? And they keep going back and forth and back and forth. And what comes out as the answer to the riddle is power lies where people believe it lies. And it's a very, I mean, I don't want to say it's a disappointing answer for the riddle, but it's just so applicable because where does power lie? Because especially during this show, we see almost all 3 of those people take power in King's Landing. We see the rich man take power, we see the king take power, and we see the priest take power. And it's just so fascinating to see what happens each time one of those people takes power.
Yeah, it's 100% there's so many spots through these first, honestly, 3 or 4 episodes of little moments like that. Just referring to how the greater game is played and giving a lot of foreshadowing. Just with that riddle, a lot of foreshadowing.
Which I think that's something that George R.R. Martin does so well as an author. And again, I know that it's different from the show, but he tries to still speckle his show with that foreshadowing, is that he's able to not only put big moments of foreshadowing into his show, but he's also able to just, I don't know, immerse the reader in his world to the sense of what's actually going on, as well as just giving it a level and a sense of personalization, not personalization, but he's tying in mythology that's in real world. He's bringing in actual situations that we've seen and recognized. And because I was once talking to a friend of mine who was discussing that they don't like fantasy because they feel it's so hard to relate to it because we're not in a world with dragons, we're not in a world with unicorns. And to an extent, I understand it, but I also feel that's just such a closed minded way of looking at fantasy because a lot, especially in these stories that have fantasy aspects, they are still just riddled with things that we experience in everyday life and everyday things. They just have a dragon that they have to add into it.
Yeah, well, I think the thing that's interesting with fantasy, and I think this is, a storytelling in broader strokes, is you're getting the chance to play out regular human emotion, situation, all of the things in such a more drastic way as to prove a point, to either over or under downplay over, all of these things to show something, show some kind of light on humanity and how it works, right? And so I think that's kind of the point sometimes with fantasy. Yes, it's a fun, different world, but I think it's interesting that it's still very innately human.
For sure. And I think not, we'll get back to Game of Thrones in a bit, but I think that this is something I actually really want to dive into. And that's there's this misconception that if you look at us today, that we're so much better, so much smarter, so much more sophisticated than people were 1,000 years ago. And to an extent, absolutely. We are more mature in our social beliefs. We're more mature in just our ways of, you can even say philosophy, but I think that's a very narrow minded way of looking at things, especially if you go back and look at history the way that me being a student of history, in a lot of ways, things are very similar, if not the same. There's really just a wheel of things just continually going on. And I also it's the meme of, oh, if both of us got transported back 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, how well would we do? Even if we're able to speak the language, we're not able to have the outdoor skills that people, we know about technology today, but we can't build a cell phone. We can't build a computer with our hands. Like it's this mythology that we're better just because we're in a different age than people that are back there. And again, yes, I agree. So society wise, social problems, yes, absolutely. We are better than how things were thousands of years ago, tens of years ago, the whole shebang. But if it comes to actually levels of intelligence, I don't know if I think it's just the modern idea that just because we're in the day that we are today, it's we're automatically better. And the reason I bring that up is tying that back to fantasy is we're able to, with fantasy, we're able to tell these stories that are these medieval, these ancient time stories that are not necessarily real, but we're able to still show how the politics games were still going on, how the manipulation was still going on back then, and really show that man has not really changed in a lot of ways. And I think that it's really just a disservice to writing in general when people are just brushing it off because they think it's unrelatable.
No, I absolutely agree, and I think that's a great tangent to go on because I 100% agree. I don't really think humans on a day to day basis have changed that much. I think is the survival skills there at the same level? No, but you go back and really they were doing a lot of similar things. They were going to the, depending on how far back you go, I think the social and like those circles, you see some form of it at every level. It might be a little more advanced now, obviously, but they were doing some form of almost everybody had a job, everybody had families, everybody they would do get-togethers or gatherings. It was some form of it. We're at where we're at from the beginnings of those. I think fantasy does a fun job of, of kind of looking backwards, but putting in all these other aspects of things than mythology and all of that, which makes it so much more fun. But I also think it's, I said, that they do the politics of all this. I mean, you go back to any of the King Henrys, that shit's crazier than anything that's in Game of Thrones. That shit is crazy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you've ever seen, there's just the shit the kings were doing. But that wife didn't give me son. Off with her head. Off with her head. We're really not too far removed from Game of Thrones.
Well, not only so, again, this is a complete tangent, but there's a specific person in history that I find so fascinating because there's one particular person throughout history she's arguably one of the most famous women to come out of history. Joan of Arc is like one of the most famous people throughout history. But something that people don't talk about is one of her best friends during the 100-Year War was this man by the name of I think it's Galais de Reyes. And he was this just super wealthy, very similar to a Ramsay Bolton if you look at his life. He loved torturing little children specifically, and he was one of the wealthiest people in France. But what people don't like to talk about is he saved Joan of Arc's life about 8 or 9 times because he was so devoted to protecting this woman who he viewed as sent from God to save France. But if you look into his life, like he was legitimately almost a vampiric figure where he was stealing his small folks' children and torturing them in his castle. But at the same time, how he would keep up morale. And this is something that's crazy. He put on a full-on play to talk about how great not even how great he was, but how great Joan of Arc was. And if you account for inflation, you account for all of the change of currency and all that stuff, the amount of money he spent to do this production would have cost more than both of the Avatar movies combined that he put into doing this. He put in, well, it's because it's a reenactment of war, and he paid for armor, he paid for weapons for everybody, and like reenacted all these fight scenes, but as a theatrical sort of thing. So again, it's showing that humans still have not changed. They're using entertainment to distract people, and they're not even using people to point to the Colosseum. This is a full-on play. This is movies. This is their Netflix over here.
That's such a crazy concept.
And again, I know it's off topic, but I really think that when people because again, I get it. Going back and reading a history book it's boring. Reading history textbooks is boring. There's a reason most people do not like history class. There's just those freaks of nature like myself who loved history back then, but that's because I was going into it and I'm like, okay, this is what Star Wars was based off of. This was what Lord of the Rings was based off of. And just able to find the fun stories behind the dry words.
That's really it. And I think a lot of that's how it's taught. But yeah, history, the Genghis Khan, what the fuck was that guy on?
I mean, he was drinking Michael Jordan's secret stuff from Space Jam. That's what he was on over there.
What the fuck? Shit that guy did in the horrific, brutal way that he did it.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Well, I mean, I think we say Joffrey, but that was more like Khal Drogo. He was going to unite he united all the Mongols.
Exactly. There it is.
And he took over all of China, almost all of the Middle East, and half of Europe. And again, we're diving down rabbit holes right now that are...
This is more interesting. This is what the kids need. They need history class.
Welcome to Professor Wilson's history class with Professor Hernandez over here. Professor Brihamed and Professor Chayce Smith here to teach. We're here to teach what really happened during history, ladies and gentlemen. Let me tell you, this is what the history that these don't want you to know. Trust me, the elites, they don't want you to know this history.
They don't want you to know the truth because they're all lizards. That's the peak. End of the day, when Big Flying Lizards has its last episode, we're doing dragon reviews on all the fucking lizards in the government.
Mysteriously, Bryce will die of mysterious causes after that episode. And his channel gets shut down mysteriously. Don't know where all the episodes lie.
Everything just goes.
But speaking of not knowing where everything goes, do we want to go into episode 2?
Let's do it.
Alrighty. Episode 2, The Nightlands. On Pike, Theon arrives home but has a cold reunion with his father, Balon Greyjoy, who despises his soft northern upbringing. Balon rejects Robb Stark's alliance and instead plans an attack on the vulnerable side of North to reclaim the Iron Islands' independence. Theon discovers that his sister has been named heir and is very jealous of the fact. In King's Landing, Tyrion consolidates his power. He exiles Jaina Slynt, the corrupt commander of the City Watch, to the Night's Watch and promotes his sellsword Bronn to command the Gold Cloaks instead. Arya trusts Gendry enough to reveal her true identity to him after the Gold Cloaks try to make off with him. Beyond the wall at Craster's Keep, Gilly, one of Craster's daughters/wives, approaches Sam, terrified of what will happen if her unborn child is a boy. Jon discovers Craster's dark secret, that he's sacrificing his newborn sons to the White Walkers. Craster catches Jon spying and knocks him unconscious. On Dragonstone, Stannis' loyal servant Sir Davos Seaworth recruits the pirate Salador San to his fleet and their cause. Stannis, whose wife has only given him a daughter, is persuaded by Melisandre to sile a male heir with her. In the Red Waste, one of Daenerys' scouts returns dead, his head delivered to her as a threatening message from her enemies. Again, even though, yes, there's a lot of buildup going on in this episode, there's still just such... Going to Theon.
That gets presented in this episode.
Yeah, I genuinely do not like. I think the actor of Theon does a great job, but Theon is just such an asshole in this show. He's just seriously such an ass. And again, I know he's gonna get humbled up real quick, but it's one of those things when you're watching him, you're like, God, can someone just smack him? So when he returns home and he's acting so cocky with the girl on the boat, just my father is going to be welcoming his son home, and nobody gives a shit that he's arriving. Like, nobody cares that he's there. And not only that, his father's disgusted with him when he arrives back.
Him trying to fuck his sister on the ride up.
Well, fun fact about that, so the actor of Theon's real sister was actually initially casted to play Yara, the sister, but they just felt too uncomfortable doing that whole scene because they're actually siblings. So they decided to go with the actress that they did. The funny thing is, like, and again, like, I appreciate why they didn't do it, but if you look at how George describes Theon's sister and look at the actor of Theon's sister, they look almost identical. And it's like I don't want to say it's a disappointment because that's a little gross, but like for more than just episode 2, it's a little disappointing because they could have had just such a good fit for an actress there. But again, I totally get why they didn't go with that direction.
All I'm saying is after the big fit that you threw last season about, certain scenes not needing to be in there and all of those things, I'm just saying.
New number, who dis?
Just saying things are getting a little nitpicky over there. But no, this whole, there's so much that happens in this episode, and all of it's so fucking crazy. All of the shit happening with Jon, the fucking Greyjoys, and this episode just has so many key parts of just.
Well, we just have to remind ourselves of how brutal of a world Westeros is. I mean, we didn't even talk about how Joffrey had all of his bastard siblings killed in the last episode. And it wasn't even, and I think this is actually, sorry, not to backtrack too much, but this is something that I saw that I really, really about how they decide to take Joffrey's character versus how he's in the book. Because in the book, Joffrey has no doubt in his mind that he's supposed to be king. He doesn't care about the bastard children. He's like, who cares? I'm supposed to be king. But in the show, they're trying to show him be self-conscious and sensitive, that he could have a sibling that has a better claim. It's almost him believing, it's him knowing that his father actually is Jaime rather than Robert, and having that level of self-doubt and showing that he has that self-doubt in himself. And I think that just makes for such a more interesting character than having just this pompous asshole that he plays in the book.
God, is he a pompous asshole? Yeah, that's interesting in the difference in that. That's just TV winning at the end of the day. That is just TV.
That's cinema. Or sorry, cinema.
Or whatever Skrillex said.
I also do really love, because we're going to start seeing Tyrion play even more and more politics, but I really do love the scene with him and Jaina Slint where he sends him off to the wall, because you're starting to see Tyrion. And I think, again, this is just showing how he understands the game. He understands how you're supposed to play this game. You don't let people be in positions of power that you can make powerful unless you have 100% faith in them. And that's where he's like, I don't trust Slint, so I'm going to replace him with Braun. And then you're going to come into it and he's going to start replacing, well, not replacing, but he's going to start setting traps for the other King's Council members.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so fascinating to watch when he does.
No, exactly. You just start to really see him. I mean, he's almost a kind of reading it as he's going through it, but he's just like, yeah, I love playing the game. This is what I'm going to do. You know, people are trying to kill me, and I'm in love with the fact that it's a thrill to him. And then Braun, which is, once again, one of the best characters.
He's getting off on it.
For yeah, sure. What else happens in this episode that's crazy? There's you mentioned, I'm trying to think, there's so much. I was trying to think of because there's really three big things, and it's
Craster, it's Pike, and it's Arya on the road. There's a lot of other things going on, but everything going on at Pike, everything going on with Arya and Gendry, and then everything that's going on at Craster's Keep. But also, I really like Salador San, who's the pirate. I'm sorry, he's got the fit pick. He looks so good. And that's the thing. When you have a wealthy pirate, they're always going to have the best outfits. I don't care what you say.
Dripped out. Where's the black pearl?
Well, that's the thing. He's wearing ivory white with gold lacing in his entire thing. And then his sword's hilt is just bedazzled with all the gems in the world. And this is so impractical. But at the same time, only a pirate that's just beyond wealthy would be doing something like this.
Yeah, all white pirate fit's pretty crazy. It's pretty fucking crazy. It's just funny because, once again, costumes, they just went so hard in this season. But once again, I think before I forget, they do an interesting. This is probably this season. I honestly can say maybe season 3 is kind of the last time that the youngest Stark, or not the youngest Stark, the not Stanza. Forgetting her name.
Arya.
I was gonna mess it up. Arya. This is the last time that her storyline's honestly interesting to me, because you're kind of like, where are you going? I think this season, next season, after that, like there's some moments, but once again, her character. You know what? I think her character, it's such a uneven climb into what she becomes and the role that plays. And once again, I think peak Arya is obviously No Face, but even that, it falls a little flat for me.
So this is us jumping several seasons,
Way
but
ahead.
I think it's appropriate to at least bring it up right now because you've brought this up. And somebody points out that Arya being able to change her face affects the story in no significant way. The only thing that she does with her face changing ability is kill the phrase. Spoiler alert. And it's a sick scene. It's amazing.
But there should have been more of that. With the assassination ability that her character gets and who she becomes, and also I don't know that they cast that character right look wise. I feel and this is what I mean, her going from, she looks almost the entirety of the show, which is fine, but that character never really grows into anything. Whereas you see Stanza, who turns into this full-fledged woman, Arya just kind of stays there and looks prepubescent the entire show.
Yes, I agree, but I think I agree with that the most, where she almost does look like a child, where, and again, you can only do so much, but I think in the first 3 seasons, she fits the look quite well. But then once she gets to season 4, season 5, season 6, season 7, but I think that's also with Bran. You can make the same argument with Bran.
And
Bran
I will.
does not age
And
into his.
I will. No, I agree, and it's exactly that. It just doesn't. I think they could have cast a little bit better. The acting was fine. I think the character was wrote kind of badly, kind of poorly. But once again, her right in this part of the story, she's kind of interesting because you don't know where she's going or what she's doing.
Yeah. Well, and again, we're going to get so much more of her character, but I really love the direction that they decide to take with her character here in season 2. I think it's a big difference than what they do from the books, but I think it's the most appropriate decision to make with this particular character. And again, I'm excited to go into more depth about it as we go into the show more, but I think that it's really appropriate.
I absolutely agree. It's interesting.
But before we close out the episode, I do just want to say, and again, like I understand, because in the book, the one main character in the book that I think has the most boring storyline in this particular season is Daenerys. And it's such a disappointment because she just got her dragons. And we're going to talk about this more, but I really think that they mess up in a lot of ways her character. Not even her character, but it's not that compelling. She's going through the desert. It's just,
it should have been more.
They could do so much
All
more.
the pieces are there. I really just think it's how the character is.
But and that's the thing too. And again, this is on George just as much as it's on Dave and Dave. It's just not that interesting of chapters in the books. I think they're the most boring chapter, with the exception of when she goes into the House of the Undying. It's the most boring chapters of anyone in the book. And it's sad because she just got her dragons, and it's just, they're cool pets right now. And that's about it.
That's exactly it. Well, she just gets immediately from that scene put into this, like, she doesn't really have any character development. It goes from what she was straight to just leader, and she just leads from that point on at the same level. Like, there's no growth. It's basically day and night difference.
And I mean, yeah, we can only beat the dead horse so many times. But before we leave for today, Chayce, I think we need to do some fit picks. I think we need to do some drip picks.
I think we should. I think we shall.
Who's got the drippiest drip? I think it's only appropriate we do one.
Yeah.
We do one for episode 1 and do one for episode
2. I feel like off the rip, Tyrion as the hand. Tyrion immediately after, he just classy. Gets that money. I think he has a classy look right off the rip. And I gotta go Cersei never takes the fits off. So I'm gonna go, I'll go.
Except for Jane.
You be correct. But that's probably my 1-2.
Okay. No, I think that's absolutely right. For me, it's similar, but I just love the armor that Tyrion arrives in. It just looks so decked out. It makes him look so much more of a boss than he actually looks, so much more physically compelling than he actually is, because it's just this bulky armor. It has the lion designs in it. It just looks so good. For my follow-up, and this might be a shock to you, but I agree that Cersei just never misses. But when we meet Melisandre with her red dress and her crystal necklace, she's going to wear it for the rest of the season, so it's not like she's going to be awarded this again. But when you first see it, it stands out, especially where Stannis, all of his people are just very bland. She had it.
I don't think that's a bad take
for this episode, but
no, I don't think that's a bad take, especially up to this point in the show. It's the most mystical outfit. She had that shit on. She had that shit on.
In a show that's very, she did have that shit on. But especially just in the show where it's being so, mysticism is just almost had a back foot. And we're seeing somebody who actually has not only magical powers, but an understanding of the magical powers that they're associated. And it's tied to a god, because at this point, gods have been more just, oh, they work in mysterious ways. This is finally a god that actually, when you ask him of something, he gives it back, whether it's for good or for ill. That's to be seen, but it's just such a fun way of seeing a level of mysticism in the show.
No, absolutely agree. It's a fun take on this part.
But episode 2, though, who has it for you?
It has to be the Night's Watch.
Really? Talk me through it.
I think they're classy. I think they're not over the top. We've gone like the glam and the armor. It is just solid outfits from those guys.
There's something to be said, because they do, even though, yes, they're supposed to be the dregs of the kingdom, they all do look just so good with their all black uniforms. The fur's black, their armor's black, just it looks good. However, I'm going to have to say Salador Sound's ivory and gold, his bedazzled sword, that just, you can't tell me that a black pirate wearing gold and ivory does not look just over
And
here.
I won't tell you that, but I knew that was yours.
He does just look so good. But Chayce, is there anything else we want to discuss before we call it for today?
That's it. I think we kind of hit it.
Well, just to let you guys know, we'll be back next week to discuss episodes 3 and 4. Also, this Saturday, I will be discussing the movie Sucker Punch with the one and only Lady Facade. So we're going to be getting 2 episodes next week because we've been gone for so long. Until then, like, share, subscribe, share it with your mom, share it with your pa, share it with your grandma, share it with everybody. Until then, have a good night.
That's all for this week's Dragon Lore. Takes cold and hot, spread shore to shore. Enjoyed yourself? Please join the squad. Follow on social media at BigLizPod. And one quick reminder before you go, to rate, review, and share the show. Thank you for listening. It means a lot. See you next week, same time, same spot.